At first, everyone believed money could solve the problem. A successful CEO made an unbelievable offer: $750,000 to anyone who could calm her young son, who hadn't spoken a single word in years. Doctors had tried. Therapists had tried. Specialists from across the country had tried. Nothing worked. Then, in the middle of the silence, the one person nobody noticed quietly walked into the room. Not a famous expert. Not a wealthy businessman. Just the building's janitor. He didn't make a grand speech. He didn't use expensive equipment. He simply sat beside the boy, leaned in, and whispered one word. What happened next left everyone in the room completely speechless. Was it luck? Was it something science can explain? Or had everyone else overlooked the one thing that mattered most? Many people don't even realize why moments like this happen. The reason is much more important than it seems. Stay with me until the end, because this remarkable story reveals a powerful lesson about human connection that many families never discover until it's almost too late. The room was perfectly still. The CEO stood near the window, exhausted after another long day of watching experts come and go. Every new appointment had arrived with confidence. Everyone had left with the same quiet disappointment. Her son sat in his favorite corner, gently rocking, staring at the floor. He wasn't angry. He wasn't afraid. He simply seemed unreachable. To everyone else, it looked like silence. But sometimes, silence is speaking in a language that no one has learned to hear. That is where almost everyone made the same mistake. They walked into the room determined to make the boy respond. No one stopped to ask what he might have been trying to communicate all along. One specialist brought colorful learning cards. Another introduced expensive electronic devices designed to encourage speech. Someone even suggested changing the lighting, the furniture, and the daily routine, convinced that one small adjustment would unlock everything. Days turned into weeks. Weeks became months. Every failed attempt quietly added another layer of heartbreak. Then something unexpected happened. One rainy afternoon, while maintenance workers were fixing a leaking pipe, the janitor was asked to wait nearby until the hallway cleared. He had worked in that building for nearly 15 years. Most people barely noticed him. Yet he noticed everyone. He remembered birthdays. He greeted security guards by name. He knew which receptionist always drank tea with lemon and which cleaner hummed softly while polishing the floors. He had developed a habit few people ever practice. He watched before he acted. As he quietly swept the hallway, he glanced toward the boy. Only for a moment. But that single glance revealed something every specialist had missed. The child's fingers tightened each time someone entered too quickly. His breathing changed whenever several people spoke at once. And every time another expert sat directly in front of him, the boy's shoulders became tense. The janitor didn't see defiance. He saw discomfort. That tiny difference changed everything. Many people spend their lives trying harder when they actually need to slow down. It happens in families. It happens between husbands and wives. Between parents and children. Sometimes we become so focused on fixing someone that we stop seeing them. Without saying a word, the janitor placed his broom against the wall. The room instantly became nervous. Several employees exchanged puzzled looks. One whispered, "What's he doing?" Another quietly shook his head. The CEO almost stopped him. After all, highly trained professionals had already failed. What chance could a janitor possibly have? But something inside her said, "Wait." The janitor didn't approach the child immediately. That surprised everyone. Instead, he sat several feet away. He faced the same direction as the boy instead of looking directly at him. He didn't ask questions. He didn't smile too much. He didn't reach out. He simply shared the silence. At first, nothing happened. 10 seconds passed. Then 30. Then a full minute. The room grew uncomfortable. Someone checked their watch. Another person quietly sighed. It looked like another failure. But hidden beneath that silence, something had already begun to change. The boy's breathing slowed. His hands relaxed. The constant rocking became gentler. It was so subtle that almost no one noticed. Except the janitor. His eyes never left the small details. Not because he was searching for a miracle, but because he understood that trust rarely arrives with noise. It often begins with the smallest signs. Then came the moment no one expected. The boy slowly turned his head. Not toward his mother. Not toward the specialists. Toward the janitor. For the first time that day, their eyes met. And in that quiet exchange, it became clear that the greatest breakthrough wasn't about saying the perfect thing. It was about becoming the first person who truly made the child feel safe. No one in the room realized that the next few seconds would completely change the meaning of that astonishing reward and reveal a truth far more valuable than money itself. The boy didn't blink. He kept looking at the janitor as though he recognized something no one else could see. The room held its breath. His mother instinctively stepped forward. The janitor gently lifted one finger, not to silence her, but to ask for patience. It was the first time anyone had asked her to do nothing. For a parent desperate to help, that was almost impossible. She stopped anyway. Another few seconds passed. Then the janitor did something so ordinary that it almost seemed meaningless. He took off his work gloves, carefully folded them, placed them on the floor beside him. No sudden movements. No pressure. No expectations. The boy's eyes never left those worn gloves. The janitor noticed. He slowly slid one glove a few inches closer. Nothing more. The child hesitated. His fingers twitched. Everyone expected him to pull away. Instead, he reached out. Only one finger touched the glove. It lasted less than a second. But the janitor smiled as if he had just witnessed something extraordinary. The specialists exchanged confused glances. "What just happened?" one quietly whispered. To everyone else, it looked insignificant. To the janitor, it meant everything. Because trust often arrives before words do. Then came the first twist. The janitor quietly asked the CEO a question no doctor had ever asked. Has anyone ever wondered what makes him feel safe, instead of what makes him speak? The room fell silent. The CEO searched her memory. She remembered appointments, assessments, reports, therapy plans, progress charts, goals. But no one had ever asked about safety. Her eyes slowly filled with tears. For years, every conversation had been about changing her son. Almost none had been about understanding him. That realization hurt more than she expected. The janitor wasn't blaming anyone. He simply understood something experience had taught him. People reveal themselves only after they feel protected. Not before. He turned back toward the boy. Still no direct eye contact. Still no demands. Then he whispered a single word. Home. Nothing dramatic happened. No sudden speech. No instant miracle. For a heartbeat, it seemed as though nothing had changed. Several people looked disappointed. Had they all imagined the connection? Then the second twist arrived. The boy slowly placed his tiny hand over the janitor's glove, closed his eyes, and smiled. It wasn't a wide smile. It was small, gentle, almost invisible. But his mother gasped. I haven't seen that smile in years. The room became emotional. One therapist quietly wiped away tears. Even the security guard standing near the door looked away, pretending to check his phone. Yet the biggest surprise was still waiting. The janitor hadn't chosen that word randomly. Months earlier, while cleaning the building after hours, he had overheard the CEO comforting her son during a difficult evening. She had repeated the same word over and over. Home. Not as a place. As a feeling. A promise that no matter how overwhelming the world became, he was safe with her. The janitor never forgot it. He realized that while everyone else searched for complicated answers, the boy had been responding to something deeply familiar all along. One simple word had carried years of love. Years of comfort. Years of quiet reassurance. It wasn't magic. It was memory. The CEO could hardly speak. You remembered that? The janitor nodded. You said it like it mattered. Then came the moment no one expected. The CEO reached for the envelope containing the promised reward. $750,000. She held it toward him with trembling hands. "You earned every penny." The janitor looked at the envelope for several long seconds. Everyone assumed he would accept it. Almost anyone would. Instead, he gently pushed it back toward her. The room froze. The CEO stared at him in disbelief. "You don't want it." His answer left every person there speechless. "I wasn't listening for money." He looked toward the little boy again. "I was listening because everyone deserves to be heard, even when they don't use words." For a moment, no one moved. And then something happened that no amount of money could have purchased. The child slowly leaned forward, rested his head against the janitor's shoulder, and the silence inside that room no longer felt empty. It felt understood. No one spoke. The sound of the rain against the windows was the only thing anyone could hear. The little boy remained beside the janitor, calm in a way no one in that room had ever witnessed before. The CEO quietly knelt beside her son. She wasn't trying to make him look at her. She wasn't asking him to say anything. For the first time in years, she simply stayed close. Tears rolled down her face, not from sadness, but from relief. Then the boy did something so unexpected that his mother covered her mouth in disbelief. He gently reached for her hand. It was such a simple movement. Yet to her, it felt larger than every therapy session, every hospital visit, and every sleepless night combined. The room filled with emotion. But the greatest surprise was still waiting. The CEO turned to the janitor. "I have to know," she whispered. "How did you know that one word?" He smiled quietly. "I didn't." Everyone looked confused. "I knew the feeling." Those 6 words settled over the room like a blanket. He continued softly. "When people stop feeling safe, they stop sharing parts of themselves. Some stop talking. Some stop smiling. Others keep speaking every day, but never truly feel heard." Several employees lowered their eyes. The words reached far beyond that little boy. One executive thought about his teenage daughter, who had barely spoken to him for months. A receptionist remembered her elderly father, who often repeated the same stories because he simply wanted someone to stay and listen. Even the building manager realized he couldn't remember the last conversation he'd had without checking his phone. The lesson had quietly become everyone's. Then came another twist. The CEO picked up the envelope one last time. "If you won't accept the reward." She paused. "Then tell me what you will accept." The janitor thought for a long moment. Finally, he answered. "Promise me something." "Anything." "When people come into this building, don't ask only what they can produce." He glanced around the room. "Ask what they might be carrying." Silence followed. Not uncomfortable silence. The kind that changes people. The CEO nodded. That single promise transformed the company more than anyone imagined. Within weeks, small things began to change. Meeting rooms included quiet spaces. Employees caring for aging parents received more flexibility. Mental health support became easier to access. Managers were encouraged to listen before they judged. Productivity didn't fall. It improved. People smiled more. They stayed longer. Arguments became conversations. The company had spent years searching for better strategies. It discovered that compassion was one of the strongest ones. Months later, something remarkable happened. The CEO received hundreds of letters. Parents shared stories of children who responded not to pressure, but to patience. Grandparents wrote about rebuilding relationships simply by sitting together without filling every silence. Teachers described classrooms becoming calmer after replacing constant correction with quiet observation. The janitor never appeared in interviews. He never wrote a book. He never called himself an expert. Every morning, he arrived with the same broom, greeted everyone with the same gentle smile, and went back to work. Most visitors still assumed he was just the janitor. Those who truly knew the story understood something different. Titles can earn respect. Kindness earns trust. And trust reaches places that money never can. As for the little boy, his journey continued one small step at a time. There were good days. There were difficult days. But something had changed forever. He no longer faced a world determined to fix him. He was surrounded by people who first wanted to understand him. Sometimes, the greatest breakthrough isn't a dramatic miracle. It's the moment someone finally feels safe enough to be themselves. Perhaps that's why this story continues to touch so many hearts. Because every one of us, no matter our age, hopes to meet at least one person who listens before speaking, notices before judging, and chooses understanding over assumptions. And perhaps the most valuable word in the world is not the one that is spoken. It's the one that reminds someone. You belong. That kind of gift can never be bought. Not for $750,000. Not for any price.